The unease began not with a frantic phone call or a gruesome discovery, but with the persistent, unanswered ringing of a cell phone against the backdrop of a quiet Saturday night in Seattle. It was August 14, 2010. Ara and Tristan Vance had just returned to their home, the evening having been a rare respite, a quiet dinner at a restaurant they had wanted to try for months. The arrangement had seemed perfect. Ara's brother, 46-year-old Paxton Cascades, had offered to take their 7-year-old daughter, Zara, on a single-night camping trip in the nearby Cascade foothills. It was a routine they had established. Paxton adored his niece, and the Vances appreciated the opportunity to reconnect as a couple. Paxton was expected to have Zariah back by Sunday morning, but always checked in the night before. It was just past 9 p.m. when Ara dialed his number. The call rang out, eventually clicking over to voicemail. She waited 10 minutes and tried again. Voicemail. Tristan, observing the tension beginning to tighten around his wife's eyes, suggested they might have simply driven into a dead zone. The Cascades were notorious for patchy cell service, yet the spot Paxton had chosen was not deep wilderness. It was a dispersed camping area, accessible and usually reliable for at least intermittent signals. Paxton was meticulous about safety, especially when Zariah was with him. Woven into the fabric of this anxiety was the knowledge of Paxton's recent past. He was a solid, dependable man, a specialized vehicle fabricator who could build or fix nearly anything mechanical. But he had endured a grueling divorce 2 years prior, a process that had left him emotionally drained. Recently, however, things had been looking up. He had started dating a woman named Isolde Ayor, and Ara had noted a renewed lightness in him. He was rediscovering his passion for the outdoors, often utilizing his customized white pickup truck fitted with a distinctive royal blue dome tent attachment that spanned the truck bed. The last time Ara had seen her brother and daughter was around 3 p.m. that afternoon. She and Tristan had driven up to the campsite to help them set up before heading back for their dinner reservation. The scene had been idyllic. The clearing was surrounded by dense fir trees, the air crisp with the scent of pine. The truck was parked, the tailgate down. Paxton, bald and smiling warmly in his olive-green t-shirt and dark shorts, was sitting in the open tent. Zariah, vibrant in a magenta-pink baseball cap, blue shirt, and purple leggings, sat on the edge of the tailgate, resting on a lime-green foam sleeping mat. Ara had snapped a photo of them high-fiving, a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. A sturdy, off-white cooler was visible near the corner of the truck bed. Shortly after capturing that image, Ara and Tristan had hugged them goodbye and driven away. By 10 p.m., with every call still unanswered, a cold dread settled over Ara. The maternal instinct overwhelmed any rational explanation. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was profoundly wrong. The relaxed atmosphere of their dinner now felt jarring, indulgent. Tristan agreed. It was time to drive back up the mountain. The drive was tense, the headlights cutting through the oppressive darkness of the winding mountain roads. They spoke little, each lost in their own swirling anxieties, oscillating between mundane explanations, a flat tire, a dead battery, and darker, unspoken fears. When they finally reached the turnoff for the dispersed camping area, the gravel crunching under their tires, they braced themselves. They pulled into the clearing. The campsite was empty. There was no white pickup truck, no blue tent, no Paxton, no Zariah. The silence of the clearing was absolute. Tristan stepped out of the car, his flashlight beam sweeping across the dirt and gravel. There were faint tire tracks where the truck had been parked, but nothing else. No gear left behind, no signs of a struggle, no note. It wasn't just that Paxton and Zariah were missing. It was as if the entire campsite had been erased. The immediate, paralyzing mystery was not just the disappearance of 2 people, but the vanishing of a large, conspicuous vehicle from a mountain clearing without a trace. By midnight, Ara and Tristan were standing at the counter of the local sheriff's office, their faces pale with shock. A missing persons report was filed, but the details were sparse and baffling. Paxton Cascades and Zariah Vance had disappeared into the Cascade night, leaving behind only a photograph taken hours earlier and an unsettling void. The frantic search that began on August 15, 2010, quickly morphed into something more akin to a desperate slow-motion unraveling. The initial surge of resources, the ground teams, the helicopters, the canine units, slowly waned as the days bled into weeks, yielding nothing but frustration and a gnawing sense of futility. The landscape itself seemed to conspire against them. The Cascade foothills, normally a haven of natural beauty, became a labyrinth of misleading trails and treacherous terrain. Each dead end, each false lead, chipped away at the dwindling hope of a swift rescue. The ground teams, initially optimistic, faced an increasingly demoralizing task. They battled dense undergrowth, scaling steep inclines, and wading through rushing streams, all while clinging to the hope of finding a single clue, a discarded candy wrapper, a torn piece of clothing, anything to suggest a direction, a struggle, anything at all. But the forest remained silent, its secrets stubbornly guarded. The air support fared no better. The dense canopy, while providing breathtaking views from above, effectively concealed the forest floor. Even the bright white of Paxton's pickup truck and the distinctive blue of the tent seemed to vanish beneath the thick foliage. The helicopters crisscrossed the valleys and ridges, the rhythmic thump of their rotors echoing the increasingly frantic beat of the search. But all they found was more trees, more rocks, and the endless, taunting expanse of the wilderness. Back at the makeshift command center, maps plastered the walls, crisscrossed with lines marking search grids and potential routes. The atmosphere was thick with tension and the stale aroma of coffee. Ara and Tristan, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair, haunted the periphery, clinging to every update, every whispered conversation. Each negative report was a fresh wound, a confirmation of their worst fears. The investigation quickly turned to the digital realm, a desperate attempt to find some trace of Paxton or Zariah in the electronic ether. Detectives pored over Paxton's phone records, bank statements, and online activity, searching for any anomaly, any clue that might shed light on their disappearance. The phone records confirmed what Ara and Tristan already knew. Paxton's last known communication occurred shortly after they left the campsite on August 14th. After that, the phone went silent, either switched off, destroyed, or simply beyond the reach of cellular service. There was no financial activity on Paxton's accounts, no credit card usage, no ATM withdrawals. The digital trail ended abruptly, mirroring the physical vanishing act. This sudden cessation of activity painted a disturbing picture. It suggested a decisive, almost violent event, rather than a planned departure. It was as if someone had deliberately severed all ties to Paxton's past, erasing him from the digital world as completely as he had vanished from the physical one. As the days stretched into weeks, and the weeks into months, the initial surge of public concern began to wane. The media coverage, once intense, slowly faded. The case of Paxton Kincaid and Zariah Vance threatened to become just another cold case file, gathering dust in the archives. But for Ara and Tristan, time stood still. They were trapped in a perpetual state of suspended animation, unable to grieve, unable to move on. The image of Zariah, smiling in her magenta-pink baseball cap, remained burned into their minds, a constant, agonizing reminder of their loss. The void of information, however, began to be filled by something far more insidious: speculation. In the small, tight-knit community surrounding the Cascade foothills, whispers started to circulate. People began to dissect Paxton's life, searching for answers in his past. His recent divorce, a process that had been emotionally draining, became a focal point of scrutiny. Was it possible, some wondered, that the pressure had become too much? Had Paxton, perhaps unstable despite his outward appearance, decided to simply disappear, taking his niece with him? These whispers, amplified by the echo chamber of small-town gossip, eventually reached Ara and Tristan, adding a new layer of torment to their already unbearable grief. Ara, fiercely protective of her brother, vehemently defended him against these insidious accusations. She knew Paxton. She knew his gentle nature, his unwavering reliability, and, above all, his boundless love for Zariah. The idea that he would harm her or subject her to the trauma of a staged disappearance was simply unthinkable. She urged investigators to look outward, convinced that some unknown third party must be involved. Investigators, while obligated to consider all possibilities, found no concrete evidence in Paxton's background to suggest instability or malicious intent. His new relationship with his older appeared healthy and supportive. His older herself was distraught and fully cooperative with the investigation. Yet, without any solid evidence of foul play at the campsite itself, the theory of a familial abduction could not be entirely dismissed. The investigation desperately needed a break, a tangible clue to anchor the sprawling theories. 2 weeks into the search, it seemed that they might have finally found one. A specialized tracking team, focusing on less traveled logging roads, located a set of tire tracks leading off a rough trail and down a steep, muddy embankment towards a fast-moving river. The location was several miles from the original campsite, in an area known for treacherous currents and unpredictable conditions. The tracks appeared to match the make and model of Paxton's pickup truck. The discovery galvanized the search effort. The possibility that the truck had been swept away by the river was terrifying, but it was also plausible. It would explain the complete disappearance of the vehicle and potentially the bodies of Paxton and Zariah. A specialized dive team was immediately called in. The recovery operation was complex and dangerous, fraught with peril. The river, swollen with snowmelt, was frigid and murky. Visibility was near zero. Divers had to anchor themselves against the relentless current as they systematically searched the riverbed, navigating submerged logs and debris. After 2 days of painstaking work, using sonar equipment and underwater cameras, they located something large and metallic submerged in a deep pool. Hope surged at the command center. Ara and Tristan waited, their faces pale with anticipation, braced for the devastating confirmation that the truck, and likely the remains of Paxton and Zariah, had been found. Heavy lift equipment was brought in to extract the object from the river. The operation took hours, the machinery straining against the weight and the relentless current. As the object finally breached the surface, water streaming off the rusted metal, a collective breath of disappointment swept through the rescue teams. It wasn't a pickup truck. It was a pile of old appliances, refrigerators, washing machines, and other metallic waste that had been illegally dumped off the embankment years prior. The tire tracks, upon closer examination, were determined to be unrelated, likely left behind by other illegal dumping activities in the area. The river debris proved to be a crushing blow to morale. It underscored the frustrating reality of the investigation. They were searching for a ghost in a landscape filled with red herrings and distractions. The hope that had flared so brightly was extinguished, leaving behind an even deeper sense of despair. As winter approached, and with zero physical evidence to guide them, the sheriff's office made the difficult decision to scale back the active search. The weather in the Cascades turned harsh, making continued large-scale operations virtually impossible. The case remained open, but the resources were reallocated. The ground teams were disbanded, the air support was grounded, and the command center was dismantled. The search for Paxton and Zariah was officially suspended. For Ara and Tristan, the silence returned, deeper and more profound than before. The disappearance of Paxton and Zariah remained a total, incomprehensible mystery. The wilderness had held its secrets tightly, refusing to yield any answers. The years that followed were marked by an agonizing absence of closure. The case of Paxton Kincaid and Zariah Vance slowly faded from the immediate consciousness of the public, becoming just another file in the cold case archives, a local tragedy that occasionally resurfaced in anniversary news segments, but otherwise remained dormant. For Ara and Tristan, however, the trauma remained acute. They existed in a state of suspended animation, unable to grieve fully, unable to move on with their lives. Zariah remained a 7-year-old girl in their minds, her room largely unchanged, her absence a constant physical ache. They marked birthdays and anniversaries with quiet, painful rituals, navigating the agonizing limbo of unresolved grief. They visited the campsite, searching for some kind of connection, some kind of sign, but found only silence and the whispering of the wind through the trees. The years passed, each one a painful reminder of the unanswered questions. Had Paxton and Zariah been the victims of a tragic accident? Had they been abducted by a stranger? Or had something far more sinister occurred in those isolated foothills? The mystery remained, shrouded in the impenetrable silence of the Cascade Mountains, until 5 years later, a fleeting image captured on a base jumper's camera would shatter the silence and reignite the search for truth. July 22, 2015. 5 years, a number that loomed large over the case, representing not just time, but the seemingly insurmountable odds against ever finding Paxton and Zariah. Jarek Bannon, the base jumper, had no connection to the missing persons case. He was simply seeking the adrenaline rush, the perfect flight. He was looking for the edge. and his pursuit of that edge would inadvertently crack open a cold case that had baffled law enforcement for half a decade. The North Cascades, the location of Bannon's jump, are a world apart from the foothills where Paxton and Zariah disappeared. It's a realm of jagged peaks, glacial valleys, and near-vertical drops, a landscape both breathtakingly beautiful and brutally unforgiving. For Bannon, it was a playground. For the families of missing persons, it was a potential graveyard, a place where secrets could be swallowed whole. Bannon's wingsuit flight was captured by his helmet-mounted GoPro camera. It recorded every detail, every nuance of the terrain as he soared through the air at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. It was a routine practice for him, filming every flight. But this time, the footage would capture more than just a successful jump. It would capture a silent sentinel, a rusted wreck perched precariously on a hidden ledge. The moment Bannon spotted the anomaly was fleeting, a mere flicker of white and blue against the grey and green, a disruption in the natural order. He couldn't process it fully at that speed. It registered as something unnatural, something that shouldn't be there, something man-made against the backdrop of raw wilderness. It was a moment that could easily have been dismissed, forgotten in the adrenaline rush of the jump, but it nagged at him, a persistent question mark in the back of his mind. Back home, reviewing the footage, Bannon zeroed in on that fleeting glimpse. Frame by frame, the image sharpened, resolving into the unmistakable form of a vehicle. A truck, wrecked, rusted, and seemingly impossibly placed on a narrow ledge, hundreds of feet below the cliff top. The cab was crushed, the white paint peeling, revealing the underlying rust. A tattered piece of blue fabric clung to the wreckage, flapping gently in the wind like a ghostly flag. The location was the key. It defied explanation. The ledge was inaccessible by any normal means. It was too high for a simple accident, too remote for illegal dumping. The only logical explanation, however, improbable, was that the truck had fallen from the cliff top high above. Bannon, recognizing the significance of his discovery, immediately contacted the authorities. He had no idea what he had found, but he knew it was something important, something that needed to be investigated. The sheriff's office, inundated with countless tips and leads over the past 5 years, initially treated the report with cautious skepticism. Missing vehicles were often found in the Cascades, the victims of accidents or abandonment. But Bannon's description, combined with the GoPro footage, raised red flags. The location was too improbable, the circumstances too unusual. Detectives analyzed the footage, comparing it to the database of missing vehicles. The white pickup truck, the blue fabric. A chilling possibility began to emerge. Could this be Paxton Conancade's truck? The truck that had vanished without a trace 5 years earlier. The implications were staggering. If this was indeed the missing vehicle, it would transform the entire investigation. The authorities faced a logistical nightmare. The wreckage was located in a remote and hazardous area, accessible only by highly skilled climbers and specialized equipment. A high-angle recovery team was assembled, composed of experienced mountaineers, forensic specialists, and heavy equipment operators. The operation would be risky, demanding meticulous planning and precise execution. The recovery team established a base camp on the ridgeline above the wreckage, the wind whipping around them, the sheer drop a constant reminder of the danger. They rappelled down the cliff face, inching their way toward the ledge, the sound of falling rocks echoing through the valley. As they reached the wreckage, they were confronted with the full horror of the scene. The white pickup truck was a mangled ruin, a twisted skeleton of metal and rust. The blue fabric, now faded and shredded, was unmistakable. The vehicle identification number, painstakingly recovered from the dashboard, confirmed their worst fears. It was Paxton Conancade's truck. The ghost on the cliff had been identified. For Ara and Tristan Vance, the discovery was a devastating blow. It was confirmation of their worst fears, the end of the faint hope that Paxton and Zariah might still be alive somewhere. But it was also the beginning of a new chapter, a chance to finally learn the truth about what happened. The recovery team began a systematic search of the truck's interior, bracing themselves for the worst. They carefully cut through the twisted metal, sifting through the debris, searching for any sign of Paxton or Zariah. The result was chilling. The truck was empty. There were no bodies, no skeletal remains, no personal belongings, nothing. The absence of any remains inside the vehicle shifted the entire focus of the investigation. If Paxton and Zariah weren't in the truck when it went over the cliff, then the wreck wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate act, a calculated effort to conceal the crime. A message from the past, whispering of a cold and calculated evil. Investigators turned their attention to the cliff top. Searching for clues about how the truck had reached the ledge, they located a seldom used service road that ran along the edge of the cliff. A remote track used for accessing utility infrastructure. The road provided a direct path to the spot where the truck had plunged over the edge. The conclusion was unavoidable. Someone had driven the truck to this remote location and intentionally pushed it over the cliff. The discovery of the truck as a deliberate act of disposal pointed to a calculated crime. It wasn't just a matter of a vehicle veering off the road. This was something planned, something intentional. The investigation shifted focus from accident to homicide. The search for Paxton and Zariah became a search for a killer. Forensic examination of the truck's exterior revealed a crucial clue. The rear bumper showed signs of heavy, sustained scraping, damage that was inconsistent with the dynamics of the fall. Embedded within the scrapes, investigators found traces of a specialized industrial paint, a unique shade of reinforced gray. This was not standard automotive paint. It was a specialized coating used in heavy machinery and industrial fabrication, giving investigators a critical piece of evidence to trace. Accident reconstruction specialists analyzed the evidence, calculating the angle of the fall and the trajectory of the truck. They concluded that another vehicle had made forceful, sustained contact with the rear of Paxton's truck, pushing it over the edge. This required a specialized vehicle, equipped with a heavy-duty push bar or bumper rig. The paint, the location, the method of disposal, it all pointed to a calculated crime, a deliberate effort to conceal the truth. For the first time in 5 years, investigators had a solid lead, a tangible piece of evidence to follow. The hunt for the vehicle that pushed Paxton's truck over the cliff had begun. The specialized paint transfer became the key. Investigators compiled a list of companies in the region that used that type of coating, focusing on those involved in heavy equipment repair, custom vehicle fabrication, and industrial maintenance. The list was extensive, but the uniqueness of the paint provided a narrow filter as they cross-referenced the list with the known details of the case. A disturbing connection emerged. Paxton Cascades' profession placed him directly within this specialized world. He was a vehicle fabricator, working for a firm that specialized in customizing heavy-duty trucks and equipment. The realization that the specialized paint might be connected to Paxton's workplace opened up a new, unsettling avenue of investigation. Authorities began a discreet inquiry into the firm, looking for anyone with the skills and/or equipment to build the custom push bar, and anyone with a motive to harm Paxton. Initial interviews with Paxton's co-workers revealed little. He was well liked, respected for his skills, and generally considered a stable presence. There were no obvious conflicts, no simmering resentments that might have escalated to violence. But investigators needed to delve deeper into Paxton's personal life, focusing on the events leading up to his disappearance. Detectives re-interviewed Isolde Aore, the woman Paxton had been dating at the time. They pressed her for details about their relationship, asking if anyone had expressed disapproval or jealousy. Isolde, still haunted by Paxton's disappearance, recalled an unsettling co-worker of Paxton's, a man who seemed overly fixated on her. She had met him briefly at a company event, and he had made her uncomfortable with his intense, unwavering stare. Paxton had dismissed it at the time, assuring her the man was harmless, just socially awkward. Isolde recalled Paxton mentioning that the co-worker seemed resentful of their relationship, making passive-aggressive comments about Paxton's renewed happiness. The co-worker's name, Jasper Redcliffe, a name that would soon become synonymous with obsession and malice. Jasper Redcliffe was a brilliant but solitary fabricator at the firm. He was known for his meticulous custom work and his unsettling demeanor. Co-workers confirmed that Redcliffe had developed an obsession with Isolde. After meeting her, he had asked about her repeatedly, monitored her online presence, and expressed a possessive attitude despite having no relationship with her. The emergence of Redcliffe as a potential suspect provided the missing piece: motive. He possessed the skills and access to the fabrication workshop, providing the means. Investigators now needed concrete evidence linking him to the crime. The focus turned to Redcliffe's activities around the time of the disappearance. He lived alone, had no criminal record, and his personal vehicle did not match the description of the specialized rig used to push Paxton's truck over the cliff. but investigators considered the possibility that Redcliffe had used company resources. This line of inquiry led to a critical breakthrough. Instead of focusing solely on personal records, investigators pulled the archived GPS data logs for the company's fleet vehicles from 2010. The firm maintained a fleet of heavy-duty trucks, equipped with GPS tracking systems. This data had not been examined previously, as there was no initial reason to suspect company involvement in the disappearance. The process of analyzing the archived data was meticulous, sifting through thousands of entries detailing the movements of every company vehicle. Investigators focused on the weeks leading up to the disappearance, looking for any anomalies related to the vehicle assigned to Jasper Redcliffe. The data revealed a chilling pattern of behavior. Redcliffe's assigned company truck showed repeated visits to the areas where Paxton frequently camped. The GPS coordinates placed the truck near the dispersed camping area on multiple occasions in the weeks before the disappearance. Redcliffe was stalking Paxton, learning his routines. The most damning evidence was found in the logs from the night of the disappearance. On the evening of August 14, 2010, Redcliffe's company truck GPS logs showed him driving toward the area of the campsite where Paxton and Zariah were staying. Later that night, the logs showed the truck traveling deep into the North Cascades, following the route of the seldom-used service road. The logs placed the company truck at the exact location of the Clifftop service road, directly above where the wreckage was found. The truck remained there for approximately 45 minutes before driving away. Further examination of the maintenance logs for Redcliffe's service truck revealed that shortly after the disappearance, the front bumper and push bar had been replaced, reportedly due to damage sustained on a job site. The damaged parts had been disposed of, eliminating the possibility of a direct physical comparison. The digital evidence, however, was irrefutable. Jasper Redcliffe had been at the scene. The combination of motive, means, and the damning digital evidence created a compelling case against him. The hidden obsession had been exposed, recorded in the ghost logs of a company vehicle. The focus shifted to locating Jasper Redcliffe and confronting the terrifying reality of what he had done. What had happened to The arrest of Jasper Redcliffe finally broke the agonizing silence that had haunted the Vance family for nearly 6 years. But the silence that followed the rescue, the silence emanating from Zariah herself, proved to be an even greater challenge. The initial weeks at the specialized trauma facility were a delicate dance of assessment and intervention. Zariah exhibited a complex array of symptoms consistent with severe trauma and prolonged captivity. She had significant cognitive delays, struggling to process basic information and follow simple instructions. Her speech was limited to a few monosyllabic words, learned phrases, and repetitive noises. She displayed symptoms of severe social anxiety, extreme startle response, and a pervasive fear of strangers, especially men. Redcliffe had systematically deconstructed her understanding of the world, replacing it with his own distorted version of reality. He had isolated her from any positive human contact, manipulating her perceptions and controlling her every move. The doctors at the facility recognized that rebuilding her life would be a long, arduous process, requiring a multidisciplinary approach. Era and Tristan Vance faced a heartbreaking reality. Their daughter was physically present, but emotionally distant. The little girl they remembered, the vibrant 7-year-old with the magenta baseball cap, seemed lost, buried beneath layers of trauma. They visited her every day, spending hours by her side, reading stories, singing songs, and gently reminding her of their shared past. They brought familiar objects from her room, her favorite toys, her beloved stuffed animals, hoping to spark a flicker of recognition. But Zariah remained largely unresponsive, her eyes vacant, her expression unchanging. Era clung to hope, searching for any sign, any glimmer of connection that might signal a breakthrough. She would brush Zariah's hair, holding her close, whispering loving words, flooding her with the sensory reminders of her childhood. Tristan, struggling with his own grief and guilt, focused on practicalities, researching therapies, consulting specialists, determined to provide Zariah with the best possible care. He felt an overwhelming need to protect her, to create a safe and nurturing environment where she could begin to heal. The initial focus of Zariah's therapy was establishing trust and safety. The therapists employed a variety of techniques, including play therapy, art therapy, and music therapy, to help her express herself and process her emotions non-verbally. They worked patiently, building a relationship with her slowly, demonstrating consistency and reliability, reassuring her that she was safe and loved. The early stages of therapy were marked by small, incremental progress. Zariah gradually began to tolerate physical touch, allowing the therapists to hold her hand or give her a gentle hug. She started to make eye contact, briefly acknowledging their presence. She began to engage in simple activities, playing with blocks, drawing with crayons, showing brief moments of childlike curiosity. These small victories were celebrated as significant milestones, evidence that the healing process had begun. But the road ahead was long and uncertain. The legal proceedings against Jasper Redcliffe cast a long shadow over Zariah's recovery. Ara and Tristan had to navigate the complex legal system, providing testimony about the impact of the crime, ensuring that Redcliffe was held accountable for his actions. They found themselves reliving the trauma repeatedly, forced to confront the horrific details of Zariah's captivity. The legal process was emotionally draining, but they were determined to see justice served. They wanted to ensure that Redcliffe would never be able to harm another child, that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars, paying for his crimes. The media attention surrounding the case was intense. The story of Zariah's disappearance and rescue captivated the nation, generating a wave of public sympathy and outrage. Ara and Tristan struggled to protect Zariah from the media's scrutiny, shielding her from the constant attention, desperate to preserve her privacy and allow her to heal in peace. They understood the public interest in her story, but they also knew that the media exposure could be detrimental to her recovery. As the months passed, Zariah began to make more significant progress in therapy. Her speech improved, expanding her vocabulary and enabling her to communicate her needs and feelings more effectively. She started to engage in more complex activities, reading books, playing games, interacting with other children. She began to form attachments to her therapists and caregivers, developing trusting relationships that helped her feel safe and secure. She slowly began to process the trauma she had endured, working through her fears and anxieties, learning to cope with the memories of her captivity. The therapists helped her understand that she was not responsible for what had happened to her, that she was a survivor, a resilient and courageous young girl. They helped her reclaim her sense of self, empowering her to make choices and express her individuality. Ara and Tristan played a vital role in Zariah's recovery. They provided her with unconditional love and support, creating a stable and nurturing home environment. They worked closely with the therapists, learning how to best support her needs, how to manage her triggers, and how to help her cope with her trauma. They adapted their parenting style to meet her unique challenges, providing her with a consistent routine, clear boundaries, and plenty of reassurance. They celebrated her successes, no matter how small, and offered her comfort and support during difficult times. They learned to be patient, understanding that her recovery would be a marathon, not a sprint. They accepted that she might never fully recover from the trauma she had endured, but they were committed to helping her live a happy and fulfilling life. The process of reintegrating Zariah into the community was gradual and carefully planned. She started by attending small group therapy sessions with other children who had experienced trauma. She then began attending a specialized school that catered to children with emotional and behavioral challenges. The school provided her with a supportive learning environment, individualized instruction, and access to therapeutic services. She slowly began to form friendships, developing social skills and learning how to interact with her peers. She participated in extracurricular activities, joining a soccer team and taking art classes, discovering new interests and talents. Ara and Tristan were amazed by her resilience, her ability to overcome adversity, and her determination to live a normal life. They watched her blossom, transforming from a traumatized child into a confident and capable young woman. Years later, Zariah Vance, though still carrying the scars of her past, had found a measure of peace and healing. She never fully recovered. The years that were stolen from her, the memories that were erased, but she had rebuilt her life, brick by painful brick. She had graduated from high school, attended college, and pursued a career in social work, dedicating her life to helping other children who had experienced trauma. She had reconnected with her extended family, forging strong bonds with her cousins, aunts, and uncles. She had even found love, marrying a supportive and understanding partner who accepted her past and celebrated her present. She never forgot the horrors she had endured, but she refused to let them define her. She had learned to live with her trauma, to integrate it into her story, to use it as a source of strength and empathy. Ara and Tristan remained Zariah's unwavering anchors, her constant source of love and support. They had dedicated their lives to her well-being, sacrificing their own dreams and ambitions to ensure that she had the best possible chance at a fulfilling life. They had never given up on her, even during the darkest days of her captivity and recovery. Their love and unwavering belief in her had been instrumental in her healing. The case of Zariah Vance served as a reminder of the enduring power of the human spirit, the resilience of children, and the importance of hope. It was a story of unimaginable horror, but also a story of extraordinary courage, unwavering love, and the possibility of healing. Even after the most profound trauma, the silence that followed Zariah's rescue never fully disappeared. The lingering silence of trauma, the unspoken memories, the invisible wounds, remained a part of her life. But she had learned to navigate the silence, to find her voice, to share her story, and to inspire others to never give up hope. The vanishing in the Cascades had been a tragedy, but it had also been a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and the unwavering love of her family. The case was closed, but the story of Zariah Vance continued, a story of healing, resilience, and the triumph of hope over darkness.